Hi, it's Alan. How you doing? I'm a AWS ambassador and community builder, and today I'm here to talk to you about something that's a little bit out of my comfort zone. So please excuse this video for being a bit more candid today. Today we're going to be talking about Amazon Bedrock, and more to the point, how to use it from a practical point of view. So one of the things I've been playing with Bedrock, generating pictures, generating chat, but also I've been wanting to do things a bit more programmatically. So working out how to do things in Python, generate files, and then store them. However, sometimes one of the problems that we come across is that iteration of trial and error. Occasionally, we find that we're constantly uploading files to test them in the environment, or we've got to build something to then run it locally, depending on the framework that you're using. But it can be a bit laborious. So what I want to talk to you about today is the ability to test Bedrock APIs and functions from within a Jupyter notebook. Now, this can be done from any form of Jupyter notebook, whether that be the official first Jupyter Labs Sagemaker notebook, or whether we're talking Sagemaker Classic, or whether we're talking the brand new shiny Sagemaker Studio that is now available in the console. I'm today going to be doing this in the new Sagemaker Studio, as it's something also that I'm finding quite new at the moment. So I also want to play with that as well. Now, how do we go about achieving what it is we're going to achieve today? Well, ultimately, what you're going to find is you want to play with code. You want to use code, you want to change code, and you want to execute it on the fly. And that's what SageMaker Notebook allows us to do. It allows us to take code and execute it line by line and change those lines to change the impact within the script. A lot of data engineers use this, and it's also used quite heavily within machine learning. And I recently started using it more so for proof of concepts and that sort of stuff. So today we're going to write a Python script which can be utilized by a Lambda function later to go and generate an image using Bedrock and then store it in S3. They're the key things that I want to achieve today. So I'm going to share my screen again. Let's go there. So what we've got here is a blank Jupyter notebook within SageMaker Studio. You'll see my instances running here across varying different types, but in this case we have the brand new Jupyter Labs running in SageMaker Studio. So let's just close off these old ones so we don't get confused. There we go. So what is it that we're trying to do? What we're trying to do is we'll do it in the console first manually, and then we'll go and write it programmatically. So we have here a playground. This playground is Amazon Bedrock's playground and allows you to go and use different models for different reasons. So if I go into the image playground and then I select a model, it allows me to pick one of two models. Now I'm going to be using the Titan Image Generator, which is Amazon's own model. This is actually in preview at the moment, so I don't know how much of this is going to stay, how much is this going to go, if it's going to improve. It always improves on GA. But if you're not sure why you can't see the Titan Image Generator in your playground, then on this left-hand side, just go to Model Access and double check that you have ticked the box next to the relevant model. In this case, I have. It's probably one of the first things you should do when you log into Bedrock, go to Model Access, and then subscribe to all the models that you can or that you want to play with. So let's go back to our playground. Under Playgrounds here, Image, select Model, and then Titan Image Generator, and then just apply that. So what you'll see now is we've got options on the right-hand side, options to either generate an image or edit an image. We can add negative prompts, so things that we don't want to see in our image. We can also upload a reference image as well. That's useful for more fancy stuff later, like putting space helmets on your best friends and that sort of stuff. The other options we have here, the different quality options, so standard versus premium quality. Just to note, it's more expensive to generate a premium image, so we're going to be using standard today. And then we've also got the orientation of the image, landscape versus portrait. So if you want to make a portrait of something like a person or a pet or a cartoon character, then that also fits quite nicely into that format there as well. We've got sizing here as well. So if you want to make a nice desktop background, then you can go all the way out to background sizes, or you can go as small as 512 by 512. So for something a bit more smaller, maybe used on a website or something. How many images do you want to create? So you can have Titan create you maybe two or three images, so you can pick the best one. And then ultimately, we've got the advanced configurations here that we'll talk about in another video, another day. But what is it that we want to do? We want to generate a picture and save it to S3. So I'm going to write here a prompt for a picture, and I'm going to look for a trophy in the rain, high quality, with a purple sunset. I don't know how that's going to come out, but what I do know is it's going to do something with it. I'm expecting to see a trophy, some raindrops or rain in the sky, and then some abstract of a sunset. Let's run that and see what happens. It's at this point I want to have the Jeopardy countdown. Ding, 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 ding. Anyway, moving on. So it's currently generating those images in the background. You can see the color is flashing on the 3 frames because we requested 3 images. And it should load any second now. No, it didn't. Okay, we'll wait a bit longer. And there we go. We have 3 images after a bit of a wait, which I didn't think that wait was too long. And if I'm very honest, they've come out really, really well. That I'd probably want to keep all 3 of those, to be honest, in the background. I'm now going to go and do exactly what I said. I'm going to save them and put them onto S3. So I've now got to go and click on the image, and I can just download that image. I can then download the next image, and then download the next image. So I've saved them to my computer now onto the hard drive. I'm now going to open up S3. And I've got a bucket somewhere in here that I've decided to pick. Which one was it? There we go. Live demo test. You'll see I've got a couple of images in here already from previous renditions. And all I'm going to do is upload, add files. I'm just going to select my files, which you cannot see, but I can. But you'll then see I've got my 3 files there. And you'll see them uploaded. And hurrah, I've got my 3 files saved from Bedrock that I'm really happy with. And I can utilize any way that I want to now on websites or on collateral at some point later on. But what if I wanted to automate that? What if I wanted to write an application which generates images based upon user input and saves them to S3 in the background, all in one hit? So we're now going to play around with Python to do something similar. because that was a lot of in-console stuff, and that was great to play with. But let's go and play with some code. Now, I've made some code earlier, which I'll be referencing specifically in and around the API called to Bedrock, but I'll try and explain that as I go along. So right here, we have a blank Jupyter notebook that we're going to be using to help write our code. So what we need first is a bit of code. We're going to start a Python file with just importing some Amazon libraries. So if we just go for import Boto3 and just press Shift and Enter, that imports the relevant libraries that we need to use to access Amazon Web Services. If you want to just check that Boto3 is correctly installed and loaded, you can do Boto3 dot __ version, and that then gives us the version number that we're running, and just tells us that we are actually running. It'd give an error there if Boto3 wasn't running at all. So what's next? What do we really need to get involved in here? Now, the first thing we need to do is probably set up some access points to get to Bedrock and to get to S3. So we're going to be using the Bedrock runtime API at this point. So we'll just go and enter that in. Bedrock is equal to Boto3.client Bedrock. And you can see with the new Sagemaker Studio, it starts to give you some prompting as to what the syntax is that we need to be going for. So Bedrock runtime. And we'll just close that off with a bracket. Not going to press Shift and Enter. I just press Enter for the next line. That's because I'm also going to set up our S3 access point as well, or endpoint, or whichever way you want to talk about it. In this case, we're creating a way of accessing S3. Our current region is taken into consideration as well. So what we'll do now is we'll just press Shift and Enter, and that's then loaded Bedrock and S3. We probably also want to give it the model ID that we're going to be using, and then the name of a bucket that we want to use as well, just as variables to make sure that we are referencing the right things. I'm just going to copy and paste this, because just like in Blue Peter, I have one that I made earlier, and then we'll just set bucket as a almost constant, and we'll call it the same thing as what our bucket was earlier, in fact. Oopsies. Occasionally you get muddled up between Mac and Windows. Okay, so now we've set our variables. Now to do something interesting, we start to actually set some real code in motion. Just put some headers in there. These headers are for the API call to Bedrock. We're using JSON format to send these API calls. And also, just for reference a little bit later, we're going to put a counter in there. So I'm going to call it I, because every good programmer calls their counters I for some reason. And that will make more sense very shortly. So now we want to create the API call, the body of the API call. This is the want of a better word, the bit that really makes it tick. Again, I prepared this earlier, so I don't have to sit here and type it letter for letter. But that's what it's going to look like roughly. He says roughly. I've copied and pasted it. And we're going to make sure that this bit here is our prompt. Yep. And then we've also got all of those parameters that we had on the right-hand side referenced here as well. So the number of images, the quality. In this case, we're actually going to go down to standard, and the height and the width. And in this case, we want to go square like we did in the console. 1024 by 1024. And then these two extra little parameters that we didn't address in the previous part of the video. We'll leave that for the next video. But also the number of images. Now I'm going to go for one image in this case, just to not be so greedy. Now, why do we have an error here? Because we've got multiple comments, maybe. I'm just going to clear that off. We don't need it. We're not going to use negative text, but you can utilize negative text later. There you go. That's a bit cleaner now from my perspective. And also, we're using JSON. So one of the things that we've forgotten to do is load the JSON library. So we do that back here under our imports of JSON, just to keep it tidy. And already that error, that little red line is gone. So we're asking for a text to image task. We're going to be utilizing this prompt. Now I'm going to go copy and paste my prompt from back here, just so we are working with the same thing. And then we've got our image generation configuration. Let's just load that. That is now a variable called body. The last thing to do is to put it all together into a single request. Now this is where we get creative. Response is equal to Bedrock dot invoke model, and then we give it all of the parameters bit by bit. Body is equal to body, model ID is equal to model ID. You see how we've been creative here. Accept is equal to accept, and let me guess, content type is equal to content type. Now, if I've got that right, I should be able to run that straight away with no errors. I'm a little bit sus because we have a yellow error there. But after a little delay, it may have gone through. And it worked. There we go. It's generated something. What we're going to do now is look at what that response entails. Now, the API does have a set way of dealing with this. And don't forget, we're working with JSON as well. So I'm just going to go and load the body of that response into its own variable. And then because we're expecting it to be an image, I'm going to use an image library called, from memory, it's called Pillow. PIL is how it's referenced. And we're going to use that particular library to convert that response to a something useful. As you can see, big error. We don't actually have a reference to this library, just like we didn't with JSON. So we're gonna go and do, let's bring that in from PIL, import image. And then we've also got some IO responses here as well that need a library as well. From IO, import byte IO. So far, so good. And the last thing we need is a base 64 library. Now, if I've got all that correct, I should be able to go and run this now. That runs okay. But what has it done? When do we start to see something tangible? Well, what we're going to do is do a little loop, because that images could be between 1 and 5 images. We've only selected 1. We want to loop through those images now and see what they are. So I'm going to create a for loop. There's probably much better ways of doing exactly what I'm doing here. I'm sure many people in the comments will tell me where I've gone wrong and what it is that I can do better. I'm always open to feedback, by the way. We're then going to just display that image. That's it. That's all we're going to do. I'm hesitant that it's worked or not. There we go. And just like our prompt, we have a trophy in the rain, high quality, with a purple sunset. That's come out all right, actually. I like that a lot. So again, we have our image, but what do we want to do with it? We actually want to send it to S3. We don't want to be messing around with watching it, viewing it, previewing it. So we're going to save it to our drive as an image and then upload it automatically. So that is just a simple image save to a specific directory. We'll put it in our current directory today. Image number, and we'll just call it test image, because as you remember, we had images in the bucket called image underscore earlier. So that's now created the file, and you'll have seen it just pop up on the left-hand side in the file viewers there. Now we're going to upload that particular file and upload it straight to S3. We just give it its file name, test dot. We've got this counter in here as well, just to make sure that if we did have multiple files, it would upload all of them separately with unique names. And then we're going to upload them to the bucket that we defined earlier. And if I've done my job right, it should just work. And just to check that it worked, we're just going to print the S3 response. And as you can see, our test image here has uploaded. And if we just view it, we download it, and we open it, and I can see that image just here. Let me show you as well. There we go, and there's our image. So what did we learn today? We learned that Sagemaker Studio and Jupyter Labs and Jupyter notebooks can be used to help proof up code, test code on the fly. We changed things, we modified things, we had errors, we added in libraries as we went along just to make things work and build things up. You can now take this code, download it as a Python file, and start to build it as a more productized Lambda function later. Add API gateways, user input for prompts, etc. But ultimately, the flexibility of being able to go and test code in Jupyter notebooks, especially when it comes to machine learning and new concepts. I didn't know this concept until a couple of days ago, because I played with it in Jupyter Labs. And I think it's always good to have different ways of playing, sandboxing, and being able to be creative without being necessarily disruptive or using expensive uh, technologies. I'm Alan. I am an AWS ambassador and a community builder. If you want to know more about the community builder program, then feel free to reach out to the community builder program just down here. And I will see you in another video soon. Thanks, team. Bye.